Hello, friends. Welcome back. Still covering aircraft fuel systems, moving into pressure fueling, which is basically a part of our area of fueling and defueling. But the special type of fueling is pressure fueling. The reason we cover it, it's in the FAA appendix number 43, and our interpretation is to at least get you up to level one on it, so there's not an actual project, but this way you can master, what do we have, 6 competencies listed on the screen. How do you control fuel level while you're pressure fueling? Um, what are the different ways of operating the valves? How do you protect the tanks against overpressure? Um, be somewhat familiar with the arrangement of the fueling system controls, indicators, and warning lights. What precautions, so safety concerns. And a question, I'm not sure if we're going to get too much, but the purpose and operation of pilot valves. Um, I'm not sure we're going to cover that, so you may want to ask your instructor about that. The definition of pressure fueling is the method of fueling used by almost all transport aircraft. The fuel is put into the aircraft through a single underwing fueling port. The fuel tanks are filled to the desired quantity and in the sequence selected by the person conducting the fueling operation. Pressure fueling saves servicing time by using a single point to fuel the entire aircraft, and it reduces the chances for fuel contamination. So you're certainly not crawling up on top of the wing. Um, so instead of just pouring it, if you're not going to be on top of the wing, you're going to have to somehow use pressure to get the fuel into the tank, because the tank's going to be above the filler inlet. And as we, oh, what's the matter? Don't I have my, um, do I have my microphone on? All right, sorry about that. Apparently I do. It's kind of a new microphone for me. There's a mute button on it, but I'm never sure whether or not what it's got to be on or off. I would presume if I refer to it as a mute button, that means pressing it in would be muting it. But I have to watch my audio mixer, which doesn't seem to be as responsive as it normally is. So, um, I am taking a development course on um, making and editing videos for classes, but that's going to be more like the 4 or 5 minute videos showing demonstrations mostly. These are in place of uh, classroom lectures in a way. Certainly would be assigned if you had missed the class. You would have to listen to one of these lecture length videos. All right, enough about that. I guess it's fresh in my mind, so it's hard not to share it with you. Okay, the FAR 23, and as we know, it also covers 25 um, and possibly the old CAM, something we've covered before. But pressure fueling systems It's in subpart 979, and the following apply. A, each pressure fueling system fuel manifold connection must have means to prevent the escape of hazardous quantities of fuel from the system if the fuel entry valve fails. B, an automatic shutoff means must be provided to prevent the quantity of fuel in each tank from exceeding the maximum quantity approved for that tank. This means must A, or 1, allow checking for proper shutoff operation before each fueling of the tank. And for commuter category airplanes, indicate at each fueling station the failure of the shutoff means to stop the fuel flow at a maximum quantity approved for that tank. So basically an automatic shutoff that can be tested before you fuel, and a indicator like a light or something that shows that shutoff means is failed. C, a means must be provided to prevent damage to the fuel system in the event of failure of the automatic shutoff means that we just talked about. And D, all parts of the fuel system up to the tank, which are subjected to fueling pressures, must have a proof pressure of 1 1/3 times and an ultimate pressure of at least 2 times the surge pressure likely to occur during fueling. So you certainly want the components to be able to handle pressure up to those levels, which if the fueling pressure, let's say, is a hypothetical 20 pounds, you would want to have everything up to the tank at 1 1/3 over 20. So what I say, 20. So that would be an extra 6. So 26. It should be able to withstand 26.66 psi, and an ultimate pressure of at least 2 times the surge pressure. So maybe not a continuous pressure, but it should be able to at least withstand ultimately 40 psi. Excuse me. Here's what one of the fueling panels looks like on the 727. So if you're able to, go out and take a look at this. It's totally accessible to you. It's in one of the... I'll look for the inlet, and it should be in the area. If I'm there, I'll show you. 727 has the 3 tanks, so you can see the 3 indicators for the 1, 2, and 3 tank in reverse order, as you can see down here. Tank number 1. These are the fueling shutoff valve switches, and there's also a manifold vent shutoff valve. Fuel service, it's not a very clear picture, but you can see the technician or the grounds crew on the fuel truck with the tube or the hose that he is filling underneath the wing. So you can kind of see where it's attached on this aircraft. Most large airports that service transport category aircraft have underground storage tanks and buried fuel lines. So it doesn't necessarily mean that he's taken the fuel off the fuel truck. He's actually got, this is like a pump, and the other end, the other hose goes into the underground facility or the attachment to the underground tank. Fuel can be delivered simply and quickly through the underwing fueling ports. And as you can see, quite a lot of fuel would be going in at once. It's certainly not a garden hose. Some large corporate aircraft and regional jets also have a single point refueling system, so it doesn't have to be the transport category. Um, the pressure fueling port on the Canadian jet has an access panel on the inboard leading edge of the right wing, which is about where it is on the 7.2. You must be checked out and trained on these systems before you attempt fueling, refueling, or defueling operations. Just because the aircraft has a port for pressure fueling, unless you're actually checked out for the procedure, um, you just don't jump in and do this. There's the panel for the CRJ, Canadian Regional Jet. You can see the levels, right and left, 1690 and 1600. Here's a aircraft I worked on, and it has the port right here in the struts that are holding on the floats. Um, but nobody was checked out on it, so we never actually used them. But the hoses would be internal, and it would take it up to the tanks, which are actually in the wings. I think I got a close up. Oh, that was the close up. Since we're talking about this is brand new. This was like right off the showroom floor, decorated as you can see for Christmas. But this had like 4 flight hours on it. Cessna Caravan 208B, totally, two like 2 million for the top part and another million for the floats. Well, not quite, but it's every bit of 3 million by the time you put it all together. Retractable landing gear in the front and on the floats, which you can and a sea rudder. Sometimes you would have to, or a water rudder, because you can't just refer to rudder because there's also a rudder on the vertical stabilizer or the fin. So there's a water rudder and in effect a rudder that's attached to the floor pedals for in effect steering the aircraft. Nice. Um, this is we pretty much looked at something like this. When the fueling nozzle is properly connected and locked, a plunger unlocks the aircraft valve so fuel can be pumped through it. Normally, all tanks can be fueled from a single point. Valves in the aircraft fuel system are controlled at the fueling station to direct the fuel into the proper tank. Uh, and think of the valve as similar to a check valve. The fuel can go up, but it can't go down. There's a plunger that locks and unlocks as the nozzle is put in. Um, Valves in the aircraft fuel system are controlled at the fueling station to direct the fuel to the proper tank. So that's kind of nice. You can watch your fuel quantity levels and fuel them pursuant to the operating handbook. This panel on the pressure refueling station has valve position switches and quantity gauges to be used during refueling. Valve open position lights are adjacent to the switches for each tank, which I can't see clearly in this picture. A float switch. This is one of the ways they comply with the FAR 23, which requires some sort of indicator. And if this is a float switch, you know it's in the tank, and that'll indicate when to avoid overfilling. It's an automatic shutoff system, might be part of the aircraft system. It closes the fueling valve when the tanks are full. A float switch installed in a fuel tank can close the refueling valve when the tanks are full during pressure fueling of an aircraft. Other sophisticated automatic shutoff systems exist. The markings you can kind of see here: Jet A, Jet A1 with anti-icing inhibitors. See the approved flight manual for other alternatives. So they don't list them all here, but you can imagine most of the fuels that are close to that. Let's say Jet A2 or some of the other ones, which I'll let you refer to the flight manual for any alternatives. All entry points of fuel into the aircraft are marked with the type of fuel to be used. It's the responsibility of all aviators, pilots, and ground crew to put forth effort continuously to ensure that only the fuel designed for the operation of the aircraft's engine is put into the fuel tanks, which I believe we covered that on day one. I've got some illustrations here of the L-1011, the Lockheed aircraft transport category. It's as you can see, there's a similar to the 727 in that there's three engines. The middle one is similar to the 727. What do we have here? Tank 1, tank 2 left, tank 2 left. Not exactly the difference there. One's got a 0 and one's got a 1. I think they're kind of showing, I'm not sure what they're showing here. They are showing the total tanks. You could find due left. Oh, I see. Outboard and inboard. That's how they differentiated on the aircraft. So, plus tank 1 and 3, which we can see closer to the wing root, which actually hold most of the fuel, as you can see, 64,000 pounds each. With the inboard tanks, well, more like the middle tanks, holding the next amount, but it's only about a quarter of what the number 1 is. And then the outboard tanks hold even half of the prior. And here's the pressure fueling system on the L-1011. Basically, the dark run is the manifold, and I'm trying to see. I can see the shutoff valves here. I can see an isolation valve. It looks like the fueling nozzle adapters are up front here. And here's the panel, the pressure fueling or defueling panel. Some indication of what the hose adapters look like. All right, and then a few questions on the subject. Pressure fueling of aircraft is usually accomplished through How do they do pressure fueling? Is it A, pressure connections on individual fuel tanks? B, at least one single point connection? Or C, individual fuel tanks over a wing and or fuselage access points? Well, we know that's not true. Pressure fueling, sometimes we'll even call it underwing because that's so common where it is. Um, so that takes you down to, are there connections on each individual fuel tank or at least one single point connection? I think at this point you can see it's one single point, especially for the speed that they want, and then you use the valves to get the fuel to the individual fuel tanks. Once you have one connection, you don't want to keep disconnecting it. In the L10 and 11, you're going to do it 6 times? No. So B. Reduces fueling time, minimizes the chance of contamination, minimizes the buildup of static electricity and any other type of fueling concern that there is. And what is meant by single point fueling system? I'll basically explain that it is ordinarily pressure fueling under wing, where one point is used to ordinarily fuel, sometimes defuel, um, more than one fuel tank. A pressure fueling system, yes, we got that, in which the fuel is pumped into the aircraft through an underwing fueling port. I believe we said that. The fuel flows into a manifold and then into the correct fuel tank as selected at the fueling station. Well, we didn't quite say it exactly like that, but we did say that we can fuel many or more than one fuel tank. What are some other names for a single point fueling system? Well, the main one I would use is pressure fueling, but we also have heard underwing fueling. Anything else? Fuselage, perhaps? On the Caravan, I'm not sure what we would have called that. It's not precisely. It is under the wing, but it's not on the bottom of the wing. It's at a different part of the aircraft. It's actually even under the fuselage. Underwing or pressure fueling system. Sorry, I got a little carried away on that one. So our first 2 answers are plenty. True or false? On a large aircraft pressure refueling system, a pressure refueling receptacle and control panel will permit one person to fuel or defuel any or all fuel tanks of an aircraft. Well, you can imagine that is actually correct, and we just saw the one person on the truck. But if the panel's right there, that one person can make the connection, build up the pressure, deliver the fuel, and indicate what tank it goes to, and monitor the quantity in each tank, balance the load if need be. Certainly, I think we'll see in another section if it's those outer tanks may be fueled last, especially if it's a swept wing aircraft, to avoid it tipping over. So that is true. So one person can fuel or defuel any or all of the fuel tanks in an aircraft. The second part of the true or false. Because of the fuel tank area, there are more advantages to pressure fueling in light aircraft. Well, they're trying to throw you off there a little bit. I'm not exactly, because it's a larger fuel tank, it may or may not be in light aircraft. But the advantages kind of go away if you only have one or two fuel tanks, and there actually is no more advantages to a pressure fueling system. That's why you don't find them in the small aircraft. They're all above the wing, which we cover in our next presentation. So this one I would say is false or not true. Because of the limited fuel tank area, you would fill it up so quick. There are fewer advantages of a pressure fueling system than in light aircraft. All right. What flight safety related advantage does a pressure fueling system provide? All right, a safety question. A, keeps the aircraft within the weight and balance limitations. No, if they had to do weight and balance every time they fueled an aircraft, that'd be definitely a lot of paperwork. It's already kind of pre-built into our calculations, and it's certainly not safety anyway. I guess flight safety. It actually might be flight safety related, any type of weight and balance answer, but the pressure fueling system does not contribute to that. B, it reduces the chances for fuel contamination. That's one of the advantages on our list. So let's see if C is better. It reduces the time required for fueling. Now, it certainly does that, but is that a flight safety? No, that's a ground efficiency advantage. So B is your best answer. And the other advantage is that it reduces the danger of static electricity igniting fuel vapors, in addition to reducing the chances of fuel contamination. Name some advantages of a single point fueling system. Well, it certainly is faster, and those two safety advantages, which I won't repeat right away, reduces fuel contamination and static issues. I guess I'm limited to those three. Let me see if they've got another one. It reduces fueling time, reduces chances for contamination and fire, and eliminates damage to the aircraft skin. Okay, sorry, I forgot about that one. Yeah, if you're over the wing, you're going to have to. I've watched them fuel over the wing. Do they always put down a little mat so that they don't scratch the surface or wreck the wax or anything? No, they don't. So anytime you're messing around on top of the aircraft wing, you're gonna possibly damage it. Damage the skin, scratch it, mar it, dent it. Aircraft pressure fueling systems instructional procedures are normally placarded on the. Where would you normally see the placard for the instructions on how to pressure fuel? Well, I would imagine it's not going to be inside the cabin or in the baggage compartment. It's going to be right there on or next to the little panel that you're actually fueling. Matter of fact, I think the regulation does indicate that it has to be marked, each refueling or defueling port. So what are the options? A, fuel control panel access door. Sounds good to me. B, the lower wing surface adjacent to the access door. Well, that's not terrible either. Or C, the aircraft ground connection point. Um, Actually, all three of them are plausible answers. You're normally going to see it, though, on the access door for the fuel control panel. A. And you should be checked out on the procedure. Otherwise, you shall not attempt to pressure fuel your aircraft. Before fueling an aircraft by using the pressure fueling method, what important precautions should be observed? Um, Basically, we can list out a number of them. Let's see what they have here. A, the truck pump pressure must be correct for that refueling system. Yeah, I would like that because you don't want to have the truck pump um, pumping out 80 psi when your system can only handle 50. So make sure that those two are correct. It's imperative. B, the truck pump pressure must be adjusted for minimum filter pressure. A lot of words that put together, they kind of sound smart, but that's mostly a little trap for the unwary. Or C, the aircraft's electrical system must be on to indicate quantity gauge readings. Uh, Now we didn't talk about that at all, but you can imagine that the fueler that's coming up to the aircraft to fuel the aircraft does not does not go into the or have the aircraft turned on, or even having the electrical system turned on, even if the aircraft engine isn't on. Um, but I would say the main issue is A. I would think a little bit about C if I was actually doing it. I'd have to think now, will these gauges work without the aircraft electrical system being on? Are they automatically, are they somehow attached? Um, I don't have a quick answer for that. It's been a while since I covered this. Um, um, I'll look into that rabbit hole at another time. All right, so the 727 has a maximum fuel delivery pressure of 50 psi. All right, hit the review video, see if there's anything supplemental. There really isn't. These are just asking. A different publisher um, is asking the same questions. There's slightly different explanations, but nothing earth shattering. I'll keep them on the PDF. So if you're later quickly flipping through the PDF to do a review for a test, um, you can see the questions twice with two different explanations. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up from there. So thank you again for joining me, and as always, we'll see you later.